Thank you to everyone who is joining us right now. The session we have just we've just turned it on, and we're going to give everyone another 1 minute to join the call. If you are having any trouble hearing us, please put it in the chat. I have colleagues on the team here who will help you navigate that. Hello, everybody. Okay, it is 2 minutes past, so I think we're going to get going. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so excited to welcome you to our workshop event today called Networking Skills to Launch Your Career. I am joined by my awesome partner in crime, Erin Haid, who will also introduce herself in a quick second. But a couple of housekeeping things off the top. So as you are listening to us chat, and if you feel inspired to share on social media, please do. Don't forget to tag us in your social posts. We're at 10,000 Coffees on LinkedIn and Facebook, and at 10K Coffees on Instagram and Twitter. Also tag RBC and hashtag RBC Future Launch, because RBC Future Launch is our very, very generous donor that has made possible licenses for schools all across Canada, and which is how we are here today and supporting you with this awesome workshop. Another thing to note, if you have questions, and please think about them over the next 40 minutes or so as Erin and I chat, because we will do a Q&A at the end, please think about your questions and put them in as they're coming to you in the Q&A on the right-hand side of your screen. You'll see a little button that says Q&A. Go ahead and pop it in there. If you have any comments, please go ahead and put it in the chat box. If you use those two interchangeably, not a problem. Also, we will find the questions from the comments. And with that, I wonder, as we are going, and I'm going to just introduce myself, if you want to say hello in the chat box, please do. Tell us your name, where you're from, what school you came through, and if you're a current student, or maybe you're a recent grad or a new alumni, or perhaps you've been in you're a seasoned professional, you've been in the industry for a long time. Let us know. Say hi. We want to know who is on the call today. With that, I am Sadaf Virji, and I work here at 10,000 Coffees, working with all our schools across the country. And I am obsessed with networking, literally. And so I am very excited to share with you everything that I have learned from my experiences. And I am also very pleased to be joined by my colleague, Erin Haid, who will tell us a little bit about her.
Yeah, I sure will. Hi, everyone. My name is Erin Haid. I'm the head of people at 10,000 Coffees, so working with this great team. I'm really excited to be co-hosting this call with Sadaf, as I also am quite obsessed with networking and just humans in nature. So hopefully we'll be able to add a few tools to toolkits while we're at it. Just a bit of background on me. I spent most of my career in the hospitality industry, primarily hotels. I started in operational roles, but most of my experiences in strategic human resources like talent acquisition, talent management, talent development, all of these functions requiring a substantial amount of networking and a substantial amount of conversation around networking. My career interests really parallel my life interests in that I'm really quite fascinated, interested, curious in humans, what drives us, what motivates us, how we think, how we respond, how we connect. And so this curiosity really complements, the work that I do, but my love of travel and learning, and of course, networking and meeting and interacting. So hopefully we'll have a really great conversation today, and we'll have some takeaways and some learnings for both Sadaf and I as well. So looking forward to the discussion. I'll pass back to you.
Thank you, Erin. So today's agenda and what we're hoping to achieve. So we're going to divide it into about 3 sections. So for the first part, Erin and I are going to chat, and we've done a little bit of work around specific areas around what is networking, why it works, and then how to use it as a way to launch your career. And then we'll move into a bit of a workshop section, and we're going to get everybody, get you to roll your sleeves up and do a bit of thinking work. And we're going to workshop some specific skills with you around networking, something that you can use right away. And then we'll move into Q&A from the audience. So keep those questions coming, and make sure that you're putting us on the spot, because that's what we like to do. With that, I am going to hand it back to Erin.
So I'm so happy you asked for putting us on the spot. I can't wait for the questions that will come in. We thought, a good place to start with the overall discussion on networking is, what is it? Why does it matter? And also what our personal experiences are with it. So when Sadaf and I were planning for this conversation, she asked me if I had any examples from my career where networking had a direct impact on my career trajectory. And after some reflection, my response was honestly, almost every job opportunity I've had has been a result of networking in some capacity. So my first job was a grocery clerk. Honestly, it was my dream job at the time. I grew up, scanning all the cans in the shelves. And I also have a really great memory for fruit and vegetable product codes, but side note, doesn't really help me now. But it was really the only job where I didn't leverage my network. But from there, truly every position, opportunity, and project can be mapped back to connections that I first made in university and then continued to make from there. So I had moved across the country to Vancouver, and a friend of mine in my dorm got me a job interview with a restaurant he was working at. Entry-level job, but it led to various positions within that restaurant. And at the same time, it also connected me to an extended network of contacts that I didn't have before. Contacts from that period really connected me then to a network of hoteliers when I was looking to come back to Toronto. My hotelier experience then connected me with opportunities that led to human resources. And those connections in turn had a really pivotal role in my accessing an external network that I hadn't accessed before. And so in the world of HR, the external network could be campus partners, community partners, peers across different industries with potentially shared interests, and then also people in HR services and technology, including the founder of 10,000 Coffees many years ago, slight foreshadow to now. And then these connections led to corporate talent acquisitions roles and really exposing me to more of a global internal and external network. So all of this is to say, I'm really grateful for the career opportunities and the ability to meet a lot of really amazing people. But I think it's important to note, and specifically for the purpose of this call, is it wasn't happenstance or coincidence that network kind of showed up in the way that it did for me, and vice versa. So if you want to move to the next slide, and I'll kind of pull some of my takeaways. When I reflect now, I think, at the time, I don't think I was mindful of having a networking strategy. But looking back at it, how my approach was a bit strategic without knowing it. And it took, when I think of what I did and how I continue to shape network, it took, putting myself in situations where I could meaningfully meet and interact with new people. So call it, committees, volunteerism, projects, conferences, stretch work opportunities outside my job, often because I wanted to, learn more. That later moved into board membership, program advisory, and truthfully, when I look, I wasn't really looking for something specific from people, not a job. I was looking to learn things, and I was looking to have and continue to look to have interesting conversations, and really to satisfy my curiosity. But in doing so, it put me in rooms with people that I wouldn't have otherwise met. and both peers who ended up doing really interesting things in interesting places, and also leaders and decision makers on future roles and opportunities that I didn't even know would exist. And at the same time, I was also building really strong and genuine relationships where people were able to see my expertise and my skill set, even things I wasn't great at, and that, you know, wasn't necessarily planned. So I'd like to think also that I contributed back to my network and continue to do so. And I make a point to, you know, partner, sponsor, support, and listen to those in my network. All of this to say is, you know, networking has been truly a cornerstone of my career, but candidly, something I still find difficult. I think, you know, we'll share through some of our examples of why, but it's especially when you join new industries, or for many of you on the call, you know, early career or in school, you might be new to the concept of searching for, you know, your career job, and coming out of school, and so maybe don't have a network in the space that you're looking to go, and it can be daunting. So, you know, in terms of more practical, what does that mean then? What's the takeaways that I've taken from this is, I think it's important how we define networking, and how we think about networking. People often say they hate networking. They hate giving their elevator pitch, or they hate asking people for things. And they tend to think, you know, by asking, or this elevator pitch, this sales pitch, that it's disingenuous, and that the whole concept, you know, of like a cocktail party with exchanging of business cards and, you know, talking to strangers, it can be awkward or uncomfortable, and even maybe one-sided. But if we think and we shift the focus on, you know, thinking about networking differently as building a network, then I think we have an opportunity to take some control and take some of that, you know, some of the uncomfortability out of it. So when we think about networking, I think the mindset, it's truly building a network. That seems simple, but it's growing a group of people that you know and interact with now and later, and it evolves over time. And if we look at it as interactions where we learn from each other and mutually benefit, it, you know, takes some of those creepy crawlies away. So first and foremost, I think of networking as research. It's, you know, the process of getting information about a profession. It also is, you know, informs potentially your professional next steps, whether that's a job search, whether that's career knowledge in general. And it's also, while you're gathering information, a dialogue around shared interests. So whether that's, you know, something you know and can share, or something you can learn. And that can be a specific, you know, to an area of work. Like for me, who primarily works within the HR space, future of work, mental health, you know, especially in the workplace, are really interesting topics. Don't necessarily directly relate to finding a job, but their general interest. They could also be something more wide in terms of, you know, psychology, politics, puppies for me, areas of common interest with individuals. And I think reminding yourself it's an authentic experience of gathering information from people and sharing is really pivotal to that mindset shift. The other is, you know, this concept of transactional relationship versus transactional versus an interaction. And I really think it's about meaningful interactions that are not in a point in time. It's not a one-time interaction. It's like, it's not a job interview. It's not, you know, the cocktail party. It's not about landing the job. And it's also never done. It's something that's a continuous evolution of interaction, and it versus that one-time transaction. So, you know, we can think about a networking event now, maybe virtually, like this as an example. It's not necessarily having the most conversations or getting, you know, the most business cards. I don't even know if business cards still exist, but whatever, the most contacts on LinkedIn as an example. It's really about the quality of those contacts, and the quality of the contact is dependent on the investment that you put into the learning process and into the interaction itself. There are absolutely, and we'll talk about it, places for cold calling and all of that, but we really need to think about the quality in the relationship. The other part is, you know, it has to be mutually beneficial. So thinking about other person's needs before you take, it's every relationship is a give and a take. And sometimes you give more and sometimes you take more, but really holistically in the the grander scheme of that relationship, there's a mutual give and take along the way. And so this can be challenging, I think, for students, specifically early in career, because, you know, what do I have to offer, maybe? There's a lot. There's ideas, there's thought leadership in the space that, you know, people have interest in. And over time, potentially there's not something maybe upfront, but to be mindful of those who have contributed and added value, to be thinking about how you add value back. And I think that makes a really rich and mutually beneficial relationship that can lead to a lot of interesting things. And that's really about engaging genuinely and authentically. So I know, Sadaf, you have a very specific perspective, specifically on human nature when it comes to networking. So I'll pass back to you to kind of pick up from there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Erin. I really liked what you said about you know, the being the genuine, like being genuine about it, and an interaction versus a transaction. What an interesting way of looking at it, right? So for me, I looked at networking and often tell people who ask me, wow, networking, or tell me networking is like overwhelming and it's too much and it's this and it's that. And I often will say to them, well, think about it not as networking in like this professional business context, which is what a lot of the time we use networking when we think it's specifically for jobs and professional purposes. Whereas I just say, think about it as making human connection. Think about it as making friends. And one of the reasons I think about it like that is because, you know, we as human beings are wired to connect, right? Our brain, our biology says to us we must connect. You know, that's Maslow's pyramid of I think motivation. It's called, after food, water, shelter. What do human beings require to be happy, motivated, and successful? It's belonging. Right? And a sense of belonging can only come from creating a relationship and a connection with other people. And the belonging, oftentimes you're looking in every place in your personal life, having a personal support system. I came here as an international student many years ago, and I came with no support system. I came with zero network. I came with knowing nothing and nobody. And I realized that I had to network or make human connections to build a intimate support system so that I felt that everyday sense of belonging, and then also to think about career and professional and the larger community and society as a whole. But remember that we have to network because we are wired to connect. And whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, it doesn't matter. We all need to connect because really biologically we're wired to do so. So don't worry too much. We're going to show you how to do it in this session, but let's all just agree that we know we have to, okay? And one of the things that we're doing while we are connecting with human beings on a human level, as opposed to on a transactional or a business context completely or entirely, is we are building long-term relationships, right? We're building trust. And trust is that factor of why networking works for literally everything, right? So building human connection and building trust with someone is how you make friends. So I trust that you were there for me when I'm going through a bad time, and I'm having a bad day, my friend's going to be there for me. That is trust. But you take that same trust that you've built in that relationship to a professional context and people that you've worked with, and you're growing trust with them. And so when they move on and they have a job opportunity or know somebody who's hiring somewhere, they're thinking about, who do I know that I trust that I can do the job, as opposed to going to, you know, someone who you don't know at all, or reading 500 resumes. And Erin, you can speak to that, I am sure. But also, what I'm really interested in hearing your perspective on, Erin, because of your experience in HR for these many years, is now in the last 1 year, the world has changed remarkably, considerably, and almost a little too fast for all of us to catch up. But how do we do networking in a virtual capacity? And what is the impact of this pandemic on our, you know, networking and how we make it work? What do we have to change? Do we have to change something?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I first wanted to just call out the part where you mentioned the introversion and extroversion piece, because I think that comes up a lot when we talk about networking, and I think it applies when we're talking about virtually, in that, people have various comfort levels with interaction, and it takes, a little bit of planning, or it takes, a thoughtful perspective that we'll get into of how you want to approach networking and where you want to approach. And then, who makes sense. And so when we think about virtual and what a year it's been and continues to be, that I think first, I think it's allowed us to understand we actually have more ability to connect with people virtually than we ever thought we would before. And so, there's less borders. And what I mean by that is, a conference doesn't have to be, everybody doesn't have to come to Toronto. You can, connect in one space, and everyone has the ability to access that. I mean, assuming technology, et cetera. And so I think it does create opportunity. I think to make it meaningful, though, it still takes an effort in terms of engagement, and that engagement shifts slightly of where and how. So when we think about engagement, I'll use the social channels as a first example of, LinkedIn is a good example of this. It's primarily where people do a lot of networking for career opportunities, job network, et cetera. But how we engage on LinkedIn, it's not necessarily about sending a connection to someone, without any context, to somebody you don't know or have no mutual connections with. It's, how are you engaging with people that you have shared interests? How do you mine them? How do you find them? And then how do you engage? And it's a lot, around, you can follow individuals that might be thought leaders in this space, businesses, industries, groups, etc. And you can engage in the content and the articles in a really genuine way. And it kind of goes back to what I had said earlier around meaningful, but also quality, in that when you're engaging in content, meaning you're replying to what someone has posted or shared, a session that's gone live, something meaningful, like some takeaways that you actually had about that. And it's not about commenting on everything, but really thinking about that's where the conversation is living, that not that it hasn't before, but it's so important now, when many of us are in our homes. And so that's an opportunity to engage slightly differently. Online communities and virtual events. Online communities, obviously, I'll use 10,000 Coffees as an example of that, specifically an alumni network, is you've got warm communities. And what I mean by warm is people have already opted in to connect. LinkedIn is not an example of that, in that it's a lot of cold call, right? You haven't necessarily opted in, you've opted in for a personal reason, likely. For an online community, you're opting in to connect, whether that be an alumni network or 10,000 Coffees, or something similar to us, in terms of nature of how we apply that, is that you've got people who want to connect, who likely have shared interests already, and you've got an entry point. And so our workshop, actually, that we put together, really talk specifically about those warm kind of communities and contacts. That could be affinity groups as well, even local communities of things that are happening in that space. The other is virtual events. There are so many, and we'll talk later of how important it is to be in the room. But right now the room is virtual events. And so how do you show up? How do you engage in those virtual events? And how do you get mutual meaning? If you're not interacting with it, it's really difficult to get anything from it, as well as to contribute. So I mean, all to say is this world has changed significantly, but it's opened some doors in terms of virtually to connect. It just means to be, mindfully taking the time to engage, likely more in a virtual sense, and to do it again in a genuine way, and to be consistent in that, because that can then lead to I think a lot more conversations that lead to potential opportunity. I think that's what I wanted to say on the virtual side.
Thank you, Erin.
More practical stuff, shall we?
Yeah. We're going into now the next stage, the next topic, which is how to use networking to launch your career. And for all the students on this call, and young people who always say, well, I don't know anyone, I don't know who to network with, and I how do I start networking? One of the things that I'm going to talk about is early, and Erin will also talk about this a little bit later, is early in your career, in those jobs that you have, those summer jobs, those part-time jobs, whatever it is, there's a network sitting in there. And the faster you tap into that, the easier it is going to be for your career as you start, moving up. And that's why I have this little like rocket ship here launching your career, because that's you just ride the networking wave, baby, and you are going to see it launch. Um, And I'll tell you a story about my networking. I have had a couple of jobs through networking. Despite me being a newcomer and not really knowing many people, I worked double time to network. And some of it was also a natural ability that I was blessed with and grateful to have. But many, many years ago, this was my second job. I did a 1-year contract at a nonprofit organization, and I forged such lovely relationships with the people there. It was such a warm community of people. I just really got along with them on a personal level. And particularly with the CEO at the time over there, we just bonded on a number of things. And he was such a lovely person, and is such a lovely person, I should say. After my contract ended, I left, and a couple of years we would keep in touch on and off via email. I remember 2 years after bumping into them in the subway, and it was such a weird, surreal experience. But these small little interactions where we were building a relationship because we liked one another as people. And I think we had dinner one time he was helping me with my career, just thinking about my next steps in life and whatnot. And I remember about 4 or 5 years after I had finished the contract with them, I got a email from him on my birthday that said, "Happy birthday, Sadaf. Hope you're having a good day. Next sentence, are you looking for a job?" And I was like, yeah, I'm looking for a job. I would have probably gone anywhere to work for him because I admired him so much and looked up to him like a mentor. If I had a mentor in my life, it would be that person. And he said to me, "Okay, great. I now work for a hospital as the CEO of the philanthropic arm. Come in. Let's talk about some options and ideas that I have." And went into the office a week later, and he said to me, "Sadaf, I have this job and this thing and these things and these things. What do you want your job to be?" And I was like I can decide. You know what I mean? And we together put together my job description, and I remember afterwards talking to the assistant vice president and saying, "Okay, so do you need me to do an interview, send in my resume?" And she's like, No, you have the job." I was like, "Oh my God, oh my God." So that, when you hear about that, the hidden job market, that is the hidden job market. And so, why we say 85% of jobs are secured through networking? Because 70 to 80% of jobs are not even advertised. And this was a specific and perfect example of that. And I wouldn't have gotten that job had we not connected on a human level. I talk a lot about human connection and genuine just connecting with someone on a personal level. And until today, that CEO, his name is Michael, we connect, we text, we like, and I call him "Hey boss," and he's like, "You're the only one who calls me boss," and I like it. And we have this great relationship. Anyway, for a lack of time, I'm going to stop telling stories and talk to you a little bit about how to start preparing for using networking to launch your career. Okay, there's some intangible things that I really want to go through. I feel very strongly about this section, and the first one, I'm going to try and race through it because we have so much to cover today. And the first thing is to know yourself. And when I say know yourself, there's so many components to this, but I'll say very quickly things like figure out what you like and what you don't like in terms of your career, right? When you're thinking about launching your career and thinking about business specifically, you need to know where your interests are. And many of you are probably thinking in school, you're like, "I haven't declared a major yet. I don't know what I want." But you still will know what few things that you like doing and that you don't like doing. You may not know that you want to be a mathematician at Google, but you will know that you like history. You know what I mean? So you figure out what you like. So understand those things about yourself, because as you're approaching people to talk to them about what you're interested in, you need to be clear on what that is, right? There's so many different components to this, but I'll also just say one other thing is think also and try to figure out if you're an introvert or an extrovert. We've touched on this a little bit before, and the definition for those of you who are confused is where at the end of the day you draw your energy from. And if you take your energy from yourself, within yourself, you are defined technically as an introvert. And if you take your energy from other people, so that means that you get excited and you get energized when you're talking to other people, ding, 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 that it means that you are at the core of your heart an extrovert. And that will impact how you approach people. So oftentimes as an extrovert, when we are no longer in COVID and you're in a physical environment, you can go to a networking event confidently on your own and just join a group, because oftentimes extroverts thrive off that. Whereas an introvert would be like, oh my God, my biggest nightmare. Do not send me alone into a networking event. And so prepare yourselves accordingly to that. Take a friend if you're an introvert and you have to walk into a networking event, and do not approach the big group, approach the single person having a coffee at the buffet table, okay? So quick little tips there. Second thing, I'm going to skip completely because Erin has already talked about this in terms of authenticity, in the interest of time. The third thing I'm going to say is that when you start off, and if you're new to networking, it's going to be uncomfortable. So similar to what Erin said, it's icky sometimes. It's really, ugh. And we have to change. She talked about changing our mindset. But oftentimes what you're going to have to do is just get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Know that the initial process, it's going to be uncomfortable, and tell your brain, because you can rewire your brain from fear, to move towards pushing through that fear. So just know that it's going to be uncomfortable and lean into that discomfort. And before you know it, it'll literally lose its control over you, because you would have done it a few times. And then your brain is saying to you, oh yeah, I've done this. I know how to do this. I don't have to be afraid of it anymore. It's not uncomfortable anymore. The other thing to being a really good networker is being curious. You know that saying, curiosity killed the cat? Don't let it kill you, but literally be as curious as the cat, okay? And because it's coming from a genuine place, so genuine curiosity is important. Don't fake it. And the reason why this works is because people love to talk about themselves. Love it. Love it. They love hearing their own voice. Ding, 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 ding. So look at me. I can't stop talking. So when you ask people questions, genuinely interested in them, it's a conversation. It starts a conversation. It's natural. It flows. Oh my God, you went to this place? What took you there? Where did you travel last year? All of those things. Where did you come from? Where were you born? What language do you speak? All of those things, if you're genuinely interested in somebody, it flows as a conversation and doesn't feel like an awkward, like networking, like, oh, no. It becomes normal, kind of just comes from inside you. And here's the thing, do not fake it. If you don't like the vibe for someone and it's not coming from a genuine place, abort mission, abort. They are going to know that you're faking it. It's not helpful for anybody, and it won't be a long-lasting relationship. Why are you putting the effort into that? It's not going to help you or them. The last thing I'll say before I hand it back to Erin is thinking about things from their perspective. So start figuring out, not like, oh, I want a job. I want this. I want this. Well, you know what? They don't care. Before you build a relationship, they don't care. They'll start caring once they've built a relationship. So you're thinking about when you're approaching them, when you're talking to them, think about things from their perspective. What can you offer to them? Maybe it's interesting articles. Maybe it's interesting information about certain things that you've done. Maybe you have something in common and maybe you can teach them something. But until they get to know you, you won't know. And so these are the things that you can start thinking about in an intangible way as you're approaching networking. Going to hand it off to Erin, who is going to talk to you about some tangible things.
I have less ding ding dings than you do, but I really enjoy the ding ding dings. I also miss buffet tables, surprisingly. So more on the tangible side, I think it complements what Sadaf has walked us through, but I've reordered some of my thoughts on this a little bit. But first and foremost, I think it's really important to research and plan, and specifically virtually. And by researching and planning, I think there's a lot to it, thinking about a career trajectory of industries, companies, thought leaders, people in the business. And really thinking about what you know through your education, through your current network, through the various areas that you gather information, but also what you don't know and where and who might have that information. The other part of research and planning, depending on where you are at in your career journey, is about what positions are available in terms of in those organizations, specifically if you're on the job hunt. So, what roles might be entry level, what might be early career, what might be the next step, and what does that look like in different industries and in different organizations? These are sorts of things where really important to know what you don't know and know what types of things that you'd be looking for your network to help you with. And so the next piece then is looking at your network. So who's in your network? And I think some people often think, their network is specifically related to the job that they're in. Or within their industry specifically. And I think, you all have a network through this space specifically, but also in your education space. And within the education space, there's a lot of opportunity to sit on committees, to, work on different projects, to extend beyond, the typical requirements, if you will. That also extends within the workplace. There's a lot of opportunity to take on different things, which expands your opportunity to actually learn. So if you're looking at, your direct network, you need to be looking at, your school, your home, your community, and of course your work, the work that you've done, and then looking at your secondary connections. So who is connected to those that that could potentially offer connections, and even third point connections. Then you're going to be looking at the areas of gap within that network inventory that you don't have a direct connection, and that's where you start getting into potentially cold calling or cold emailing. And there's some specific tips that we can provide on that. The third, I suppose, and really, really critical, once you've kind of figured out where you should be, where those conferences are, where those meetings are, where those people live, you got to get in the room. And so it kind of goes back to my reflection on my own story is, some rooms I was invited into, some rooms I forced myself into, and some rooms I forced other people to let me into. And I think that part's important now. Obviously carefully, it's not just about forcing yourself on people or opportunity. That's not necessarily the best strategy, but there is a point to advocate for yourself, and to ensure that you've got an opportunity to connect. So you got to kind of stretch beyond that and figure out what rooms that you should be a part of, with or without inside your comfort zone. Quick thing on technology and socials, we've talked about this a little bit, but I think really helpful, specifically when you're actively looking for a job, is obviously technology now, but technologies like 10,000 Coffees. And I think I go back to that warm group of contacts that specifically on 10,000 Coffees when it comes to the RBC Future Launch program is connections are with alumni and people who have been in your shoes, who have studied what you've studied, who have a really a clear point of view of where you might be at, and are really willing to help. And so it's a wonderful place to start. And if we'll give some tips later on of how to really make those meaningful. Beyond that, I think something we often don't think about is Twitter, but Facebook, even Instagram. Some companies are moving into, I don't know if Snapchat is still alive, but Snapchat, TikTok, and these other areas that specifically for early career programming might show more about their employer brand or whatnot, and are able to interact then. So you're going to kind of figure out where your industries and your technologies will be. And the other part then is the resources that you have. And so career-based learning is really the concept of figuring out where your resources are that are going to support you in the tools. And so for a lot of you, you have career services who have a lot of resources. But beyond that, we also have, a lot of education in terms of podcasts, books, other people, affinity groups who will be able to, from, how to write outreach emails, how to interview, public speaking in general, like these really tangible skill sets that are going to support in the concept of connecting with people and the concept of talking about yourself sometimes, and of how to interact when you're nervous and things like that. So multiple resources available, I know within career services, but then an extension that they can certainly support you in. I feel like we have just so many thoughts and ideas, Sadaf, but really important, to me moving into the workshop area and what we kind of wanted to share.
Yeah, thank you, Erin. I'm going to quickly move on into the workshop section. So we are going to do a little bit of work today, right now, and I want all of you to either pull up a new Word document or Google Doc or pen and paper, whatever it is. Pen and paper may not work as well, but let's pull up another sheet and we're going to actually create an outreach message. And why is an outreach message important? Now, we know that no matter where you are connected in today's day and world, virtually, we have to send a message to get connected to meet up with somebody, right? And because it's all virtual. Now, you could be using this on any platform, but today we're going to go through a exercise where we create an outreach message on the 10,000 Coffees platform so that you can send it to the person that you have been matched with, or if you haven't been matched with someone, then somebody else, and I'll show you how to get there. So we want you to walk away with an actionable tool. And so we're going to do a practice outreach message. And I want everyone to, we're going to take 5 minutes. I'm going to go through the components of a good outreach message. And then we're going to take 5 minutes and we're going to all write it on our own. And then I'll walk you through the next steps of actually sending it out to someone, because I really want to see results from this. I'm very excited for you to send outreach messages that are well crafted and well thought out, and so that you can get all the yes, I'm ready to meet, yes, I want to meet with you, oh my God, such a great message. I want all of those things coming back to you. So the things that you would need to write a good outreach message. The first is obviously the salutation. Please try not to delete this. I dislike it so much when people just say, don't give me a hello, Sadaf, or hi, Sadaf. You know, I want to feel like I've been greeted here. So greet them, okay? Super simple. The next thing you're looking to is establish a connection. Now, on the 10,000 Coffees platform, like Erin has said, everybody has already joined there, and it's a warm connection because you are connected to the institution that you joined through, right? So you're either a current student, or you are an alumni, or you are a professor or a staff member or whatever, or a friend of the universities or the college, but you are connected. And so you have a warm connection there. And so it's really easy to write out why you are writing, right? And the reason you're putting this is because you want to tell them why you're connecting with them. So mention the connection and add any context that you might need to before making the ask, which is the fourth piece, which is really, really important as well. And then you want to close with a way and making it simple for them to connect with you. So these 5 components are pretty important. I've put a sample message in here, and I'm read it out to you in case you can't see it. And because I have been connected with someone called Schwan on my team today, and I am going to send that message when you are sending yours. So I wrote this out earlier today. And it says, hello, Schwan. So great to be connected on 10,000 Coffees through. And you can insert the name of the hub that you are on and the name of your platform, your 10,000 Coffees program. And I was saying here, I also graduated from the engineering program, just like you did. And it looks like you work with one of my mentors at RBC Venture, Jackson Lee. What a small world. So I've found out through doing some research. Remember that research piece that Erin talked about? Super important. I looked up Schwann's name. I found out where they were working. I know that they're working with someone that I used to work with. And so I've mentioned that. So that's now created this connection. They're thinking, oh yeah, you know someone I know. Okay, this is going to be good. And then I create some context. I'm really interested in learning about your career journey. So I've done my research on them, so I know where they've been, and I want to know how they got there. I want to hear from them directly. Would you be open to a virtual chat next week? This is the ask. You need to have an ask. Okay, particularly if you're looking to have a meeting. If you're not looking to have a meeting, then I understand that your ask may just be very soft and saying, oh, I just want to connect. Oftentimes on LinkedIn, you might get this. But with 10,000 Coffees, the purpose is that you're meeting and creating a network. So we want you to have those conversations. My closing is, I want to make it easy for them. And so I'm going to say, below are some times I have open in my schedule. Please let me know if any work for you, or suggest others if these don't work. Look forward to connecting. All the best. Sadaf. So this is a sample message. Some do's and don'ts that I would say if you're not going to use obviously you're not going to use my message. We're not copying here. Is personalize your message. Keep it brief and be specific. So ask specifically what you want from them. Is it a 20-minute meeting? Is it a connection to someone else? Sometimes your outreach message has different purposes, right? Also do a spell check. Kind of important, like really. What you don't want to do in an initial outreach message, the first outreach message, is ask for a job. If you are connecting on LinkedIn, please don't say that LinkedIn suggested that we connect and then full stop. Why did LinkedIn say that? What? Why are you? How? This doesn't tell me anything. LinkedIn is using an algorithm. It's not you know, but we have brains. Let's figure this out. Why we actually want to connect, right? And don't put in an ask that's unclear, right? You know, in this example here, you see that's very specific. I'm asking for their time to talk to them. And like I said, in other cases, it's this outreach message could be to someone that you're connecting for the first time on LinkedIn. You know how you have an option to send a message when you connect with someone? Please always put a message in LinkedIn when you are connecting with someone. It's not good practice to send somebody that you don't know at all a LinkedIn request and not have a message associated with it. Anyway, so I'm going to put my timer on for 5 minutes right now, and we may not even need the full 5 minutes. So maybe I'll put it on for 4 minutes, and we will, your time starts now, and let's all take a hot minute or hot 4 minutes and write this message. Now, if you were starting to think about, well, I'm writing this message, but who am I writing it to? As you are thinking about the body and the content there, I'm also going to direct you to the 10,000 Coffees, your 10,000 Coffees program. So if you don't know where to find it, I'm going to ask my friend Erin Mays to write out the 10,000coffees.com/schools link in the chat box for everybody. So you can click on that link and you can find your school. When you click on your school logo, you will see this screen right over here, this little box that says step 1 that I took a little screenshot of. And right at the bottom, you'll see a login option. Now, all of you are members to be here. So you can just click login. It'll take you to your hub. And most of you should have a little notice as soon as you log in that you are currently connected to somebody. You should have an introduction for this month or this cycle. I'll tell you what to do if you don't have someone, but most of you should. And you can follow along with me as I'm saying this. Mine, as you can see, was Schwan. You can click on the button that says say hello and send them the message that you've written out. If you want to take a second to look at their profile, that would be smart because we talked about research. That's the context of what you're doing with that message. So So your 4 minutes are done. And I'm going to give everyone another minute to navigate into their 10,000 Coffees hub and click on their homepage and look at the person that they're being introduced to, which is step 2. And send the message. Now, if you do not have an introduction waiting for you for whatever reason on your hub, then you can go to the members tab on the left-hand side of your page and go to the search tab and search a keyword that you're interested in. So I'm very interested in marketing, so I did an example here of marketing. And I found 25 members that showed up with the keyword marketing in their profile. I clicked on their profile and you have the same option of saying hello, and you can send a message to somebody through the search function if you are not introduced to them. I saw a question pop up for people who are not on the 10,000 Coffees platform. If you've come through our sign up form and you don't have a school that you're associated with, I would say you pick somebody that you're really interested in connecting with on LinkedIn or through another social platform that you can reach out to. And using the same concept of those 5 key steps for building an outreach message, which was including a salutation, including your connection, adding context, making your ask, and closing out the message. Okay, so now the challenge of this workshop is that if you have a successful connection from this message, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to challenge all of you to post about it on LinkedIn. And I want you to tag 10,000 Coffees and RBC and hashtag RBC Future Launch. And we will feature the best posts on a LinkedIn post in a couple of weeks. That way you get some exposure, and there's a lot of companies that we work with, and so that will be some nice exposure for all of you. I've just been told by my colleague that a lot of people are asking where to find their introduction. And how to find your introduction is right over here. So the first step is you log into your 10,000 Coffees hub at this link that my colleague Erin has pasted, 10,000coffees.com/schools. Look at the list over there and click on your school. You will see this screen pop up right over here when you click on your school name. And you see that little button at the bottom, it says login. Click login. Once you log in, you will see a main page that will have something like this in the middle that tells you who you are connected to right now. So it says current. I think if you can read my my image, you will be able to see right here your current introduction. Now, if you don't have an introduction for whatever reason, you want to follow the second part, which is navigate to the members tab and search for someone based on a keyword. Now, I am going to move on from our workshop only because we have a ton of questions, and those who are still interested in doing the, still working on their outreach message, you go ahead. But it looks like our first question is from Devin Millet. I hope I'm saying that name correctly. Devin, you're going to be unmuted by my colleague, Erin Mays. And do you want to read out your question? I believe that it is about networking in an industry where you don't have experience. Devin, I think, are you there with us?
Might be helpful to read it out. Ooh.
Yeah, I'm going to read it out because I think Devin might still be muted for whatever reason. And so their question is, how would you start networking in an industry where you have no experience or prior connectedness in the field already, especially in these times or COVID? Erin, do you want to take that?
Sure. I feel like I can relate, Devin. So I recently moved and made a switch, obviously, into the tech sector. And candidly, I don't have a network beyond, my great colleagues and friends at 10,000 Coffees. I think, my best advice and what I'm trying to do myself is find where professionals live who are in this space that might have shared interest or shared roles that I, would be either seeking or am in. So for instance, there's a great network for human resources called the People Group. There lives many HR professionals in that space that work in the tech space. And that's been already a significant resource. The other thing I would suggest is obviously Sadaf just showed through the 10,000 Coffees platform, you're able to search, by industry or by profession. And this is where cold calls can be really mindful in that, I don't have network in this space. I see you've just made a career move. I'm really interested in having a conversation about how you did that. So those would be, my hot take. But it can be a challenge. You got to dig a little bit deeper in mind for those connections and mind for those groups. Sadaf, do you want to pick up the next one?
Yeah. So our next question is coming from Hamza Haddad. And I don't know, Hamza, if you can speak, but I will read out your question. I try to take energy from others around me, but most of the times I become a little nervous and I end up saying things I didn't want to say and forget to say things I want to say. But I do try to come up to people and introduce myself. I would say I'm in the bubble of introverts, but very close to breakthrough. What advice would you give me on this case? Hamza, I don't know if you are there, but listen, I hear you, dude. I understand this. I feel you. And one thing I'm going to say, Hamza, and I hope you don't mind, Erin, for me to take this question, is that a lot of those nerves are coming from a place of fear because our brain is telling us, well, you haven't done this before, so let's not do it. Your brain is protecting you. It's wired to protect you because it's doing something new. But if you push through and keep doing it, your brain starts to learn, oh, this is what it does. This is what it feels like. It's not something to be fearful of. It's something that doesn't have a bad outcome. It has a pretty good outcome. And so what I would say to you is to keep doing it and do it anyway. Feel the fear and do it anyway. And it will, at the end, you will feel that the discomfort, will kind of lose its control over you. That fear that, oh, it's not really, sounding right. And I forgot to say this and I didn't. And you're going to start to do it more and more and it'll become natural and it'll become a kind of a, a conversation that'll flow as opposed to something that you're feeling like, oh, I have to ask these questions and I shouldn't be saying that. Don't worry too much about that. Just keep trying it. We're gonna make mistakes. And here at 10,000 Coffees, our number one motto for us is progress over perfection. So you don't have to have it perfect. You just need to do it so that you're growing and learning. Thank you so much, Hamza. Okay, I think we're going to do one more question, and it looks like we have Iris. Am I saying your name correctly? Iris Guo? I hope so. Iris, you are asking us, do you have any software or resources that can help us to network more easily? Hi, Iris. Erin, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of resources, and again, depending on what your like the field and whatnot that can be provided. I get a lot of insight from podcasts, and a lot of it is mining the topic itself, and then you find subject matter excerpts in that space to then start to follow, and you start to see the resources that they put out. There's a lot of free resources in the space with career coaches, executive search firms, things like that, and then of course internally. So like starting there is helpful for me. The other thing, I mean, the easiest call out for me is 10,000 Coffees. Is certainly a product of technology that you can leverage. And then the classics. I mean, LinkedIn is a great starting point, and I think there's great value in that. There's a lot I think that we can potentially share following that. But Iris, if there's something specifically in mind or question like that's more specific to, you can feel free to reach out and ask that question directly. I'd be happy to answer. Okay, on the hour. Well, the half hour.
Yeah, I know. We are at time. There is something I want to say a few closing words, and if people need to jump off, that's fine. They are if we all want, we can stay a couple other minutes if we want to keep going. Though I would like to say a very warm thank you to everybody who has made it out today. Thank you so much for joining us and being a part of this lovely event. I'm just trying to share my screen again because I had a couple of pointers that I wanted to share with you all, but things to take away for today. Number one is to please use these skills that we have worked at today. So that outreach message, it's the first time we did it. I hope that you can do it again and again and practice it and make it perfect and keep sending it out to people until somebody responds, in the way that you need them to. The second point I want to say is please share on social media. Please continue the conversation. There were a couple of questions or several questions I think that we couldn't get to. We will be doing a post on LinkedIn in the coming days. So add your questions in there and we'll put it in the comments, and Erin and I will continue to have that conversation. I don't remember what the other points were because I'm going from my memory here because the presentation isn't showing anymore.
The invitation for the next session.
Oh, yes. You know what? Our next event is on May 20th, and we're going to continue talking about soft skills and what it takes to be successful in the workplace. So please, please, please join us for that. We will have a special external guest for that event, and that more news on that coming very soon. Please remember that you will see a survey form about this event in your inboxes immediately. So as of now, please take the 2 minutes that it takes to fill that out. It helps us so much in improving and continuing to provide good programming and information to all of you. So thank you once again. Thank you to my colleague, Erin.
Thank you, Sadaf.
This
There's a couple of you asking about video recording and whatnot. We will be sending that out to the group and likely posting it as well. So it will be made available for sure. And thank you, Sadaf, for the opportunity to co-host with you and your dynamic networking personality. It's been a lot of fun. So thanks everyone for joining. And practice the skills, practice them with each other, reach out to each other, practice them. But thank you.
Bye, everyone.